Blog Talk Radio.
We are the UR Tennis Network. Our mission is to be the voice of tennis. We enlist a team of passionate enthusiasts to promote our sport. We strive to bring interesting perspectives on the many spins of tennis. Our goal is to provide the learners of our sport with current news and information from many angles. We seek active participation from communities interested in tennis, but tennis is not interested in them. We are expanding our outreach. Tennis is a true lifetime sport that needs to be talked about, and the UR Tennis Network pledges to pursue this idea relentlessly.
Good morning and welcome to the Parenting Aces radio show on Blog Talk Radio's UR Tennis Network. I'm your host, Lisa Stone, and we have another great show for you today coming from chilly Atlanta. It is very, very brisk temperatures here outside, and in fact, we are on our second day of school cancellations in the rest of the country. Please don't laugh at us here in Georgia, but we really don't know how to manage ourselves when the temperatures drop into single digits and our roads can't handle it and our businesses and school buses can't handle it either. So we're all holed up here together, even though it really is truly a sunny, beautiful day out. It is cold, and we're enjoying not having to get up early 2 days in a row for school. So there you go. Today I have on the air with me Trent Aaron, and I'm really excited for him to be on the show. We've been trying to make this happen for a few months now. Trent and I first met each other at a Futures event in Alabama a few months ago. My son was playing in that event, and Trent was there coaching some players, and he and I struck up a conversation, and he's just such an interesting guy. I know you guys are going to love listening to his stories and hear the information that he has to share. Let me just give you a little bit of background on him, too, because he comes from a very wide range of experiences in the tennis world, and so I think he's going to be able to offer a pretty interesting perspective on this game for us. He has been playing since he was 6, but kind of seriously since he was 11. He played in the juniors, and he played for his high school, and then played college tennis at Transylvania University, where he worked his way up to the number 1 singles player there, and had a very successful collegiate tennis career. He went out on the tour after college and had some success there as well, and eventually moved himself down to Southern California, which is, any of y'all who follow me and all my posts know that I consider Southern California to be tennis mecca. So that's where Trent wound up, and he has continued to play on the professional level and in men's open events around the world, actually. He coaches several kids. He has worked with some incredible coaches over the years, and I'll let him talk more about that. And one of the things that has really kind of made Trent stand out in the tennis world is he's worked with Brian Battistone and his family on the two-handled racket. And for those of you who aren't familiar with the two-handled racket that Brian developed, Google it and take a look at some of the video online. It's very, very cool. So before I bring Trent on the air with me, I want to play a quick ad for StopSportsInjuries.org. And when we come back, we will have with us Trent Aaron.
Warning. Orthopedic surgeons are seeing an increase in overuse injuries when young athletes perform the same repetitive, stressful motions over and over. Pitching, tennis, weight training, even long swimming workouts can cause overuse trauma that may require surgery. If your kids play and train hard, visit orthoinfo.org or stopsportsinjuries.org. A message from the American Academy of Orthopedic Surgeons and the American Orthopedic Society for Sports Medicine.
Welcome back to the Parenting Aces radio show on Blog Talk Radio's UR Tennis Network. I'm your host, Lisa Stone, and I just want to apologize right now for any noises you may hear in the background today. As I mentioned before, school has been canceled yet again here in Cobb County, Georgia, and my son is in and out getting himself ready to hit the tennis courts. So you may hear some foot traffic, some voice traffic in the background, and I apologize for that. All that said, I want to welcome on the air with us today Trent Aaron. And Trent, are you with us?
I'm here, Lisa.
Awesome. Thank you so much. And I know you're visiting our side of the U.S. today. You're down in Florida. I hope it's a lot warmer there than it is up here in Atlanta, but I'm just so glad you could be with us and we could finally coordinate our schedules well enough to make this work.
Yes, I'm in South Florida, and I haven't actually been here in about 5 years, but I swear this is a beautiful tennis community they have down here. I mean, they have so many courts, and they got the Del Rey tournament going on, and I just swung over. It was a coincidence that you wrote on Eric Quigley, who happens to be from my home state, and I got to watch him play Chase Buchanan in his first round, and then he's still going. He beat another really good player and having, I think, his best run at a ATP event. And so, I mean, it's, as far as watching, and they just have so much going on down here. It's perfect.
That's fantastic. So I kind of build this show that you would be talking with us about a healthier way to play tennis. And given that the Parenting Aces audience is comprised mostly of parents of junior and collegiate players as well as some coaches, what does that mean, a healthier way to play tennis? Can you kind of give us some background and some insight onto what you're thinking?
Well, as you stated in your intro there, I've had an association with the Battistone family, who was a family that we were coached by the same. We had an Australian coach in Southern California who had coached Jimmy Pugh and a number of players. I think Jimmy Pugh was probably his most famous pupil, and we had started. Dan, Brian's older brother, had been with him for 7 years, and then I saw how he improved, and I was actually coaching a college team, a Division I school in California, and I said, "Gosh, Dan, you've improved." He got up to number one in the Open in Southern California, and I said, "I want to go wherever you're going. I want to go there." So he introduced me to this coach, and so I was with him for actually 7 years. He was a mentor, and he also coached Brian for about 3 years. And that's kind of what bonded us. So we had sort of this same type of background. And then Brian, both of those guys were raised Mormon. Dan's still, a devout Mormon. Brian was raised Mormon and reads various things. But they both went on missions. And Brian was always dreaming up new ways to play tennis. And for my money, I think he's probably the most entertaining player on the planet to watch. So I've been friends with him since he was 17, coached him a little bit traveling, and now he's 35. He's still playing, but we're both sort of in a player-coach role. And he came up with another inventor, Lionel Burt. They've started, wouldn't tennis be great if you were hitting left-handed and right-handed? And people say, that's impossible. But, I've been right-handed all my life, and Brian started this idea of, and actually I don't want to misrepresent that we were the people that invented double-handle tennis, because double-handle tennis rackets have been around for actually 100 years, and different people have tried different versions. And so anyway, he created this type of tennis, and I started using it initially for the sort of the competitive advantages, which would be the reach and the leverage, and I felt like I had maxed out. I often tell people that I got to a point in my tennis career where I thought it would be impossible to beat Roger Federer with a one-handle racket, but maybe a two-handle. So that's what led us to it, to starting to use it. And Brian actually, for 200 years, everyone had hit a standing serve, our traditional serve, and then he came up with this volleyball jump serve totally on his own. And he was gone for 3 months. I was traveling with Dan, and I said, "Where's Brian?" He said, "Oh, he's working on something." And then no one knew where he was, and he went off into Utah and got a court and just for 3 months practiced this volleyball jump serve. And he's some people call him a YouTube phenomenon and stuff like that. So, and it is actually, I actually have probably the second best jump serve on the planet that I know of. I should say that because I started imitating him too. And at first I thought, gosh, this is all just for show or whatever. But, we honestly believe that it's going to bring back this serve and volley because it puts you about 6 feet closer on your first volley. I mean, if I just saw an article 3 days ago where Sampras was interviewed and said, serving and volleying is totally extinct, and that I grew up in an era where that was all you did. I think I chipped and charged and served and volleyed on every first serve. This is late 80s. And now the sport, many people say because of the strings, and I actually don't think the rackets are any more powerful. Maybe a little bit, but I think it's the string technology has made it so that the ground strokes are so good that it's almost useless to serve and volley because and if you approach deep, everyone says hit your approach shots deep. If you hit your approach shots deep these days, I mean the 14, 15-year-old kids will take 3 steps over and hit it by you so fast you won't even know what hit you. So the sport's evolving. We're hopefully leading. I call it a tennis revolution, which is getting people to wake up to using the other side of their brain, the other side of their body. We say you wouldn't go to the gym and do curls with just your right arm, but that's what most tennis players are doing when they play. They serve all right-handed, and it starts at an early age. I think it's a total. I actually really believe that this is the next step in evolution, or I wouldn't be as passionate about it. When you come out and you see a kid for the first time take his first tennis lesson, you'll often see, the kid, someone will say, hey, put that racket in your hand, hit a backhand, and backhands are beautiful. And we actually promote hitting 2 backhands, a left-handed and a right-handed. But if you honestly just give a kid a chance and just start throwing balls, they don't even know if they're left or right-handed. They'll hit, and they'll throw the racket back and forth. It's more natural to actually, we feel like, play our way. So, in school, someone will say, or even parents will be, oh, look, my kid's going to be a lefty, and then they start sort of reinforcing that behavior. But I think we all have a natural tendency to sort of be ambidextrous, and it takes a little bit of concentration and a little bit of focus and a lot of practice to sort of develop that side of your body and get that full brain, full body, and I was listening to your advertisements about the orthopedics and people talking about, overused injuries. But if you're constantly loading one side of your body, say to serve in a tennis match, you're going to create what we call lopsided bodies. And this is coming from someone that played 25 years of one-handed tennis and ended up with just that, a lopsided body. And, I've had, still working my way back through, it takes me an hour of a Goscue training or stretching, just to be able to play 2 hours of tennis even to this day. And when I get out of it, my body gets very out of aligned and painful and stuff like that. So any other questions, Lisa?
Well, it's so funny because my son has a buddy that lives in the Atlanta area too, and they play practice matches with each other from time to time, and his buddy plays both hands on both sides. So he has a two-handed forehand, two-handed backhand, but he serves left-handed. And I was watching them play over the weekend, and it's so interesting to watch this kid. He's one of the top-ranked juniors in our section, and to sit behind him and try and figure out where his ball is going to go is near impossible.
The disguise.
Yeah. I mean, it's just crazy. And I brought that up to my son after they played this weekend. I was like, how do you know where to go? When you hit him the ball, how do you have any clue where it's coming next? And he said it's next to impossible. They play enough now that I guess he's learned his patterns, but it's it's fascinating to watch.
Oh, it's interesting you should say that because, Brian, that was, at one point, I think in the, I'm not exactly sure which year, sometime in the 90s when he started thinking about this, there was 4 players in the top 50, the top 50 of the ATP rankings that were two-handed both sides, Byron Black, Jan Michael Gamble, Fabrice Santoro, and a Dutch player named Ramon Sluiter. So, he was into that disguise factor that you talk about, and it was just, and Monica Seles. She was actually one of our partners in the company that is an owner of the company, had a deal worked out with her to create our racket, and she was behind it. She hit with a prototype, and there was a disagreement about how much money would go, but she was actually, when she was, this is, what I've heard, she was going to be a part of developing the racket, and somehow it fell through. But later we all got it together, and, that's it. We're just, here we are. We have 2 versions. I can't believe I'm down here in Florida, and I met a guy and practiced with him last night who uses one of our versions that we don't really push that much anymore because we're like, we don't want to confuse the public. And Brian actually used it on the tour. He switched to it. This is how much of a risk taker he is. We all thought it was going to be an improvement from the original, and it's called the Diamond. And there's a guy down here that's using it. He won 2 USPTA doubles titles, and I think he's got like a gold ball, or maybe not a gold, like a bronze. He's done really well, and I'd never even, he just picked up our racket online, and he actually liked the one that we're not really promoting that much. And after hitting with him last night, I said, I think this is great for players that have a one-handed backhand and they want to play a two-handled racket. And then I actually taught him a shot with the racket because I used it for 10 months myself. And another history on it, Brian actually beat the guy that won Wimbledon, I think in 2010, Jonathan Marray or Frederick Nielsen, one of those guys. He beat him in doubles 2 months before with that version of the racket, and then 2 months later he won Wimbledon. And so anyway.
Very cool. Very cool.
Yeah.
So people that watch the videos of the two-handled racket and Brian's jump serve, one of the questions that comes up is that legal in tennis? And and it is, yeah? There's no rule against either one of those things.
Oh, it's totally, and if you ask me that before 10 a.m., then you have to buy me a beer at 6 a.m. No, that's what I always tell people. If we had a nickel for every time people asked if it was legal, we'd be billionaires by now. But we do get asked that, and yes, our racket is, Dan and Brian played the Newport, Rhode Island. It's actually in the Hall of Fame. If you go to the Rhode Island Newport Hall of Fame, they have a version of our original red racket there, and a lot of times people that are there and they send us pictures. And Brian played Wimbledon qualies and doubles once, and U.S. Open twice, and getting a racket legalized is not much to. I always tell people, if you can beat Roger Federer with a snowshoe, they'll let you use it. Or there's not many specifications. It has to be under 29 inches. But when we started all this, we had to send prototypes to the ITF, and then they send we used to have to carry a letter with us, and to tournaments and pull it out and say, look, this is ITF legal. And we had people. I honestly had it. I was playing like it would be the equivalent of playing the Georgia State Championships 40s, and this is in Germany, and they weren't going to let me use the racket. They're like, nope, he's out of. You can't play the tournament with that racket. And I was like, well, if I can't play with my racket, I'm going home. And then I was getting ready to leave.
Seriously.
And somebody looked it up, and they're like, there's no way I could do anything with a single hand. In about 8 days, I probably could. It's never really the racket; it's the player behind the racket. And I wish I knew that with surfboards, because I keep buying surfboards thinking that one's going to make me surf like Kelly Slater, but none of them do.
I'm going to ask you.
But I do understand it in tennis.
Right. Trent, do you mind seeing if you can up your volume again? I know you've got a headset on. Maybe put the mic a little closer.
Is that better? I don't know where the mic is.
You just keep fading in and out on my end, and it may just be me.
We got to start all over again.
No. We're good. Okay, so let's talk about this from an injury prevention standpoint, this natural approach to the game. When you get a new player, or maybe they're not new to tennis, but they're new to you as a coach, how do you take them through the process of adjusting to playing both sides of their body?
Well, there's been, that's, and I understand this phenomenon because I was that way. When the Battistones, these are two guys that really didn't do anything with a single-handle racket, to, like, what I would say, do anything. Like, they did stuff, they accomplished stuff, they got a couple ATP points here and there, and then they came out with this racket and they started playing, and with the competitive advantages and stuff like that, within 2 years, I think they got to 120 in the world. And these are guys that played with a single-handle racket for like 4 or 5 years. So, but I was seeing them in that process. I was friends with them, and I used to, be really even with them when they used the one-handle racket. And then they started beating me. I mean, it wasn't even funny. I would say they were bending my wrist back, because of the leverage and the power that they were able to produce. But I was like, God, I've played for 28 years, and I don't want to give up all that knowledge of, that I've built up, and it's taken me so long to get this good. And I think at the time I had like 5 ATP points or something in doubles, and, it'll take me a whole year, but it's really not that difficult of a learning process. And it's, like I said, it's kind of like a surfboard. It's, you can use any racket, but it is, I say, a 10-day process. And it's not a comfortable process. When you start playing with it, and I always tell everyone, be late on everything, meaning the racket's already in front of your hand because of the angle that it's shaped at. So you have to kind of move your contact point back, and then a lot of the recreational and senior players that were getting there, they're like, yeah, that's easy for me. I'm late on everything, so they so it can be easier, but people are like, wow, you really want me to be late? You're the first coach that's ever told me that. But the contact point, I felt like I played with it 2 hours a day for 6 days. On the 7th day, I feel like I would have beaten myself. And we're sort of in the process of doing a challenge with people where we get them like, hey, play your favorite practice partner, someone who really is, you win one time, they win the next time, play that guy a set, and then use our racket for 10 days and then play him the set again, and tell us, if you do a little bit better, or, and then I honestly feel like I would have beaten myself after 10 days. Now, there's other natural tennis players that will tell you, hey, it took me 6 months, it took me 7 months. And you will get better than just that initial 10 days. But there is a whole process. We are still in the process of filming, the lessons and the various shots, because there's so much that you can do with it. I mean, it creates all these different possibilities. But I would encourage people to know that it's not really that long, and it's definitely well worth the effort of making the change and putting the time in to see if you can get better, so using it, or less pain. And most of our players, or a lot of the players, I coach a pediatrician, so many players that have come to our racket where they were told by doctors, like, hey, tennis isn't for you. You are in so much pain. You're never, this guy, I think, had a stroke in his arm, and, he had wrist problems, and actually, I think it was his hand. But there's so many people. We have another lady, double carpal tunnel surgery, a single-handled tennis racket hurt her too much. I've had the tennis elbow surgery, a version of it called a radial tunnel release. This is when I was using a single-handle racket. I mean, it's so the vibration going down 2 handles is a lot less. And I think the senior players get, if you see people after 70, like reaching across their body to hit a backhand volley, it becomes painful, just because of the joints and the wear and tear on your shoulders. And you'll see, if you watch older 70 to 80-year-old players, they often throw the racket into their left hand and hit a left-handed shot just because they know it's going to feel better on their body.
Interesting.
And yeah.
I'll have to watch my dad a little more closely next time I'm home.
No, watch it. I mean, you will see people in the park, and then so they totally get us when they meet us. They go, "Wow, this I can," and you put it in their hands. So a lot of our market has been people like that, and then once they do switch, and then we get made fun of so much. But we've heard it all. We've heard every joke. So they get sort of grounded in it. It's almost like having an exotic pet or something. Everywhere you go, it's like having a boa constrictor around your neck, and it creates such conversation. And people say, "God, what's that?" And we say, "Oh, look, you got 2 hands, 2 handles, 2 feet, 2 shoes. It makes total sense." And there's a go ahead.
But I mean, do y'all honestly see this as becoming part of a mainstream tennis protocol, whether in the juniors, on the pro tour, or in on the senior circuit? I mean, is that the goal? Is to make this a mainstream option for people?
We feel like there will always be people that will there's some people that you meet that will never give it a try, and I think that's what makes it so challenging and fun for us, because you develop friends that are you start to use your whole body, but you're also using your whole brain, and you become a better problem solver. I mean, a lot of this is I see a lot of your articles, and there's a lot of stuff in the media about tennis these days, like and the money and how lowly paid say the number 150 player in the world is compared to say the number 150 baseball player in the world or basketball player, and a lot of this we brought about because we're like, gosh, how can we generate income but also share a healthier way to do things that will cause people less pain and sort of bring about and there's a whole other process that, as I was saying, I was just into the leverage. When I first when you hit a smash with our normal racket, I was one of these guys that was pretty good at doubles, and I worked on my smash. I wanted to have it, but I would sometimes have to hit 8 or 9 smashes to win a point, because guys would be running it down. And, when you hit a smash with our racket, the point's usually over, like it doesn't come back because it has this sort of natural leverage pulling down motion. It's almost like dunking a basketball, but it has a fulcrum that once you start the swing, it just times your swing perfectly, like at the time that you should be snapping your wrist. Whereas I always think that a one-handle person has to tell their wrist, like, okay, now's the time to snap, or now's the, whereas ours, you just swing the racket and it snaps for you. So there's definitely, another, so that's what I was into in the beginning was all of the type of advantages, and I was like, God, there's so much reach and disguise and stuff like that. But then I started looking at him and going, gosh, he hits a lot more left-handed, he is getting a full brain. So then now we promote a system, or I sell people a book, or I sell, people, there's a thing called whole brain power, and it was an ambidextrous tennis player from Southern California, a guy that went out and he actually got on David Letterman, and he created a whole system for developing your ambidexterity. I don't know if you've heard about the book 7 Habits for Highly Effective People, and sure. It's by Stephen Covey, and one of his is lead from, so you start to brush your teeth with your left hand as opposed to your right. When you're doing that, you're sending messages. And then people always think, gosh, I don't know if I could ever get my left hand as strong as my right. And it's actually not about strength building as much as it is sending as many messages. So that doesn't mean you have to actually go out and physically practice left-handed tennis. I mean, you're going to be doing that too, but you can do it mentally. You've heard about the people that say you shoot foul shots. They do studies where they had people actually go out and practice their foul shooting 300 a day, and then they had another that just shot 300 in their mind, and they didn't actually physically shoot, and then they do a contest at the end of 6 weeks or whatever it is. I could be totally off on, and the people that mentally shot foul shots actually increased their ability. So there's so much visualization, things that you can do, practice. And once you start to develop that, Michael Lavery is the name of the guy that wrote the book Whole Brain Power. He came out with a system, handwriting in our school. It's like, I hear that in the public school systems now, they're not even teaching penmanship. And if you read his book, it's a pretty heady book. I always suggest that people go straight to the how-to. How do I become ambidextrous? I mean, if you want to read about the science and all that in the book, it's great, but it's way above my head. I mean, I'm a jock. But I always tell people, go straight to the how-to, but if you want to read about it, it's pretty cool. But if you look at the penmanship, our president, and since if you look at the handwriting of like Benjamin Franklin or all these people, I mean, they had exquisite penmanship. This is how you develop your brain. It's through the fingertips, the touch. And if you start to work on your penmanship, I mean, in our schools these days, I mean, I hear that there's kids that, they just constantly print. I mean, I was one of those kids. I mean, I didn't have that good of penmanship. Since then, I've started working on my penmanship. Then you start to work on your left handwriting, and in the beginning, you're like, wow, this looks crazy bad. But all the information is on one side of your brain, and it starts to come through. So it becomes like a meditation. You start eating left-handed, using chopsticks left-handed. There's tons of ways throughout the day to work on the other side of your brain. And apparently I got one lady that was debating me in Hawaii. She said that it's not actually proven that if you do all these things that you fend off Parkinson's and Alzheimer's and stuff like that, because I used to always say that. I used to say, oh, yeah, it prevents all. I'm careful to not just throw that out, but it's been said that possibly that it does prevent or help in the aid of holding it off. And, so much of what you're doing and what people all over, every sport, I mean, if you're looking at our Super Bowl these days, and again, these are facts that I don't want to say that they're total facts, but I heard that there were $850 million put into paying off. The NFL had to pay last year for early, dementia and Alzheimer's from concussions. I mean, all sports are moving in a healthier way, or we're working to prevent that. It's like soccer heading the tennis ball these days, or heading the soccer ball is I hear that that's bringing on dementia and Alzheimer's and stuff like that. They're doing their best to make softer soccer ball. So it's, we've gotten so strong so fast, but a lot of the things that we're doing may not be super healthy, and football and soccer. And so, if we can make tennis, a little bit less stress on your arms and make it so you can play. I mean, it is a sport for a lifetime. It keeps you active. I mean, even normal or even single-handle tennis, all tennis is healthy. I mean, Dodo Cheney just, she won 300 national championships. I mean, this is like, she was 100+ years old still playing tennis. I mean, it definitely keeps you alive, keeps you active. If perchance that, there's a few people, there will always be people that play traditional tennis. We hope that it'll be a mainstream thing. And, right now most of our players are what I call part of the intelligentsia, are really bright people that kind of are able to say, oh, wow, this may be coming and this does feel better. So hopefully it becomes mainstream, but we'll see.
Are you seeing much of it on the junior circuit when you go out with the young guys that you coach?
It's funny that you should say that, because we're down here with a team of, two twins or a set of twins that I just took them to a tournament. Brian's coaching them all the time, and then I take them to a tournament and they win their first, they just won their first junior tournament in Florida. They're 17 and they are playing single-handed, and they're kind of their original coach, and then now Brian's their coach, and they're always wanting to go that route. They're actually doing a lot, working on their ambidexterity and playing single-handed tennis and playing well. We're not saying you have to use our racket, but it's I think the Michael Lavery book documents, that a lot of great athletes, including Kobe Bryant, Wayne Gretzky, Michael Jordan, were all completely ambidextrous. I mean, you can see Kobe shooting three-pointers sometimes, left-handed, and foul shot, so it's something that can help all sports, your life in general. We're not saying just our racket is going to do that, but gosh, I kind of got off on a tangent there. What were we saying? What were we talking about?
How many junior players are you seeing using that?
Right.
The tech?
I mean, it's a tough sell because tennis is a really traditional. It's like we're just now also starting to sell tennis gloves. I mean, I've been known as the guy on the tour that wore gloves, for 12 years. Why? Because my hands would crack and bleed if I didn't wear them. I had dry skin. I lived in California. We get Santa Ana winds. I would be playing, in December with like a pound of tape on my hands. Nadal, Rafael Nadal and Gail Monfils right now. I mean, they're putting so much tape on their hands just to play normal tennis. They might as well be wearing gloves. It's a, and then that's a whole nother patented technology that's out there. There's quarterbacks using gloves. It's definitely, gosh, I'm losing. Get me back on track again, Lisa. What were we talking about? The juniors.
How,
okay,
how popular the technique is.
Yeah, and so we have juniors that are using the racket. We have a kid right now in Portugal that's number 30 in the 12s, coming. His dad was able to see that. There's tons of videos. If you sign up on Facebook for ambidextrous tennis, his name's Cesar Borja. We have a 12-year-old in Florida that I hit with the other day named Esteban, completely ambidextrous, hitting two forehands. We always say, everyone says run around your backhand and hit a forehand. Why not have two forehands? But I also say, why not have two backhands? It's like Stan Wawrinka right now. I mean, he opened my eyes to the power of the backhand last year when he won the Australian Open, and I think that's the most dangerous shot on the court. Federer, it's like, he's able to angle it, but you can do that with the two-handle racket, and that's, we get that question a lot as people going, but I had a one-handed, and so there are coaches out there that are using it, but a lot of times, you're at a facility and, there's a lot of powers that be in tennis. And, I remember when the first Babolat came out, they made it basically, I feel like, because of the strings. They already had all the top players in the world, and they had this money base behind them, so they were able to go to the Orange Bowl. And I think like 10 of the top juniors, they just, Pierre Babolat went there and it's like, here's some rackets, giving them away. And they were able to, so the powers that are there, but a lot of times at facilities you have coaches who are kind of like, oh, wow, I don't know how to teach this natural tennis stuff. This is like, and they're grounded in sort of keeping what they know is as going. And so, you'll have we have coaches in San Diego that practice and compete with a double handle racket, but when they go to work and they're working under a head pro, they teach with a single handle racket, it's like, because they don't want, and so it becomes hard to reach certain juniors. I have probably 5 or 6 kids in LA that I teach, and even that, it's like I was at a facility, they would show up with their double handle racket, and then, when I was working at a facility, this is like within a year ago, my boss's kids are number 1 in the nation, they're very heavily invested or believe in the Babolat, and they'd come up to these kids and be like, why are you using Trent's stupid racket? And these kids would look at him and go, because he wanted me to, so it becomes difficult, when you have people, but it's, like I say, it's challenging. And
Trent, we just lost you, so I'm hoping you will dial right back into the show if you're listening. To my listeners, I apologize. I don't know what happened. He got booted off here, but I'm gonna get back to him and get him to call right back in. While we're waiting for him, here he is. That was quick. Trent, you back?
Yes, I'm back. See, they don't want the general public to know all this stuff. They're keeping it from you.
Yeah, I don't know what happened. You just all of a sudden cut out on us. But I wanted to ask you, too, because this was something that was really interesting to me. When I met you in Birmingham, one of the moms of the kids that you coach was there, and she was telling me that one of her children is autistic, and has been using this natural approach, and I don't remember if she said he was using the two-handle racket, but she was talking about how this approach to tennis was so therapeutic for an autistic child. Can you talk about that with us and tell us a little bit more about how you came up with that?
Oh, I don't know that I can state that it, it hasn't scientifically been proven. We do have some users that are, say, one guy is teaching. He teaches tennis and volunteers at a prison. And I always say, so I've donated a couple rackets and say, keep them using their lefty. It'll balance them out. It'll get a. But yes, she actually, she's the mom that's down here with us, and she wrote a book that all the doctors told her son was autistic and would never, and she didn't believe the doctors, and she took a natural approach, and she got into this homeopathic, and luckily she was in a position where she could afford that and sort of go outside the box. And actually, Jamie just got it to the third round of the futures down here. We're hoping to get him nationally ranked so he can get into all the futures. That's sort of the first step. He's only 17, super talented, and I think the name of the book is Jamie, can you hear me now? And with autism, it's definitely something that's been brought to my awareness as far as, I think they're talking about GMOs and our food supply, and just, it could be something that's becoming more and more prevalent. And it's like, it's pretty amazing what she's done. I mean, to think that this kid was ever diagnosed as autistic because he showed zero signs of it. I mean, if you met him, he's probably the most polite, fair, balanced, friendly, just intelligent, witty, smart, so he's got all these things going for him, and you would never know that he was diagnosed as autism. So I don't know that he is doing a lot of the ambidextrous work. He has a left-handed serve. He's still not using our racket because it's like he had this original coach who was actually a great player, won the NCAAs and doubles, and I don't know if it's a loyalty to that, or he might be like me still, thinking like, gosh, it's going to take me a whole year to get good. I've been using this racket my whole life. It's going to take me at least 2 years. So we often talk about it. I do my best to not push it, even though I'm constantly joking about, like we got all these half-brain or half-body, like tennis, but, the mom actually who wrote the book, she's one of our, we probably have 8 females on the planet using the racket. It would actually help females, I believe, more than males, because I think the only difference between, say, Serena and the guys is Serena's serve. I take that back. Serena's got a guy serve, but the average female serve is slower than the average male. Or if you took like the number, typically. But our racket, I always get in trouble if I say it adds power, but it adds leverage, and it adds sort of height on the way that your ball kicks up, and it adds like more slice because you have this counter effect of what the racket's doing to the ball. So, but she, she who wrote the book is a big believer in the technology, and these kids are being trained ambidextrously, but they're using a one-handle racket, which I must say, people always say, why don't you just use a one-handle? Why'd you come up with this racket? There was a guy in France, ideas come about on a mass scale, and a lot of times, a kid came up, he was half French and half Scottish, and I think he was 702 in the world ATP, and the guy serves left-handed, serves right-handed, it's a right-handed forehand and a left-handed forehand with a one-handle racket. And we actually send them a prototype. We're like, hey, we want you to use our racket. I don't know whatever. I haven't followed up with them lately, but even just the idea of ambidexterity, he was an example. Now, for me, I can't imagine trying to return a serve where you had to throw the racket back and forth like that. And as we talked about before, I mean, two-handed both sides is proven to. There's been hundreds. There's been a high percentage of players that have done really well in that way. It does, Bartoli. But even just the idea of, I think 2 years ago, Rafa Nadal won Roland Garros and Maria Sharapova won Roland Garros. And both of those people, if you see Rafa signing autographs, he signs them right-handed. They always say Tony Nadal tied his hand behind his back and taught him to play, made him a lefty. And it's like, he's a perfect example. He's doing everything right-handed, but he plays tennis left-handed. And Sharapova was the exact opposite. She's actually a lefty. This is what I hear. Again, there's no way of me proving it, even though I do know her a little bit. But she was in Russia. They made everyone do everything right-handed. So when she went to learn to play tennis, but you'll often see her take a hand off and hit a left-handed forehand at times, and they say that she's left-handed and everything else. I don't know that for sure, but so I can't really make those statements. But there's two examples of two athletes that are ambidextrous right there, and winning.
Right. I mean, I don't think anybody could argue with either of them their success. So. Yeah, pretty crazy. But in terms of using this natural approach in a therapeutic manner, is that something y'all are looking into, kind of expanding into that arena a little more, or not so much yet?
No, I mean, we definitely, we do. I mean, it seems like we get a high number of players coming to us because they're in such pain with, like, single handle. But for mentally, I haven't really, I'm a big encourager of everybody getting the book Whole Brain Power and developing their offhand and stuff like, and doing, as much as they can with their offhand. But there's definitely a therapeutic, you're giving me ideas here, but perhaps we could even do more with it. We just got to figure out what's the best way to do that.
Right.
Yeah.
I think it would be kind of a cool deal to see where it goes with that. I mean, I know, like, my middle child rides horses, and horses are used so much in therapeutic programs, to help people with all sorts of things, from mental illness to physical impairment to mental impairment. I mean, just all kinds of issues. And wouldn't it be cool if tennis could kind of be part of that therapeutic process as well? I think there's a lot to be said, especially because of the individual nature of the game. That it would be a great tool to help people that needed that kind of help.
Yeah.
So let's talk a little bit more about getting the word out in terms of your work in the junior tennis world and the coaching side of things. What is your thought process around junior tennis development, where we're headed? Because there's so much conversation right now, especially as we're all waiting to hear who Patrick McEnroe's replacement's going to be at player development with USTA. This talk about we're just failing in the U.S. in terms of developing players, I take issue with that. I think we're doing a great job. I think we have some really talented kids in the pipeline, and some really hardworking kids. What do you see as a coach from the kids you work with? Are you seeing a problem with motivation or with athleticism or commitment or discipline, or do you think it's just, things run in cycles and we just happen to be on the, downside of the cycle right now.
Well, if you ever look at my history and the coaching that I was, I had the mentor that encouraged me to get out of the U.S. and I always say, I think there's like a statistic that like 88% of the world's pros, in the top 100 or something like that, that were all raised in Europe. But I'm a big believer in not doing so much the USTA at home to develop players as much as, say, get the kids traveling. It's like you want to get a kid good on clay. That's one of the reasons we're down here, even though I don't really feel like we should be down here. I think with, we're developing two kids. I feel, and our plan is to go to Europe for the spring and the summer and the fall. That's in Europe, they have a lot more points, ATP points. I'm talking about pro development. So over there, it would be the equivalent of our state. This is in the getting into the pro game. So at the same time that you have a tournament in France, you have one in England, you have one. These are all like it's like our states, whereas we'll have one tournament, lower ranking tournament to get the first points to be able to get in. For 250 or 300 million people, we'll have one in one state. We'll have it in Texas one week, so you've got players coming from all over North America. It's so much more competitive. I mean, to even just get a doubles ranking, it's like these people are down here, the qualies are 128, whereas in Europe, things are a lot more spread out because there's a lot more tournaments. Every single country, I mean, if you look at how many futures and Italy, they have one every single week. It'd be like having a future in Georgia every single week for 52 weeks of the year. It's like, you're going to have more opportunity. You're going to, people say, so for me with the kids, as far as, we've tried, say in California, they have this USTA development center called Carson. It's right near my house, the Home Depot Center. They built clay courts. We got to get our kids as good as the juniors and get them on clay. Well, the climate in California is not really so good for clay courts. It's dry. It takes a lot of water, to sort of create the clay courts that you get in Europe. It's like it's so. I always say, if we put our funding into developing traveling teams, and then how do you do that? And it's like learning a foreign language. If you can get these kids in Europe, there's a great system. I went through all this stuff myself in Barcelona. They have like money tournament systems with the kids where they go and they train and they play during the week. All the tennis clubs of Barcelona are pretty empty from, say, 10:30 in the morning till 4 o'clock. So they have like money, like little tournaments for 13, 14, but all the way up until open players. Playing each other, getting. You can go as an American and play those tournaments and learn how to play clay court tennis against the best type of where they play the best clay court tennis in the world. It's like instead of building clay courts here and getting hard court players playing a hard court player on a clay court, let's go, and it's a whole way that you move, even for grass. It's like, how can you practice on a grass court these days? It's almost impossible so you have to basically make it, to even get on grass. But, playing on surfaces other than the ones you're brought up on, I think will develop. A lot of people say our best athletes end up in basketball and baseball and football, and it is the sport traditionally. I mean, I think that's great that we even have an opportunity to develop middle and lower class players. I mean, the Williamses are a great example of someone that came from, but they're maybe the one in the few that did it. They didn't play junior tournaments. They did, but they came through somehow. They willed it. And, in Italy, that you don't even think about being a tennis player unless you're in a certain income bracket, unless you can belong to a tennis club, So it takes money, it takes talent, it takes perseverance to make it. I've always been about thinking outside the box. As far as the USTA, and I hear that they're doing things, they're allotting more money for kids to get developed or to be able to travel and learn how to play on different surfaces. I always hear there's, a lot of times it's just kind of a turnover. There'll be a new person coming in and he'll have his ideas on it. And, it could be that we're in a system like that. I feel like, the Williamses were a little bit out of the box. They got through. Eventually an American male will get through, and we have a lot of good players. I was out, there were 5 in the quarterfinals the other day. I mean, American tennis is just waiting. I think there's a way that we move on the hard courts. It doesn't really help us on clay and grass, and I've got my own ideas about teaching that. I think we run too hard, if you know what I mean, like because we're primarily brought up on hard courts, and there's a way to sort of move smoother and it's still explosive, but with a small first step. For a long time there were guys like James Blake, top 10 in the world, great side to side, forward and backwards, but just maybe ran a little too hard to really break through on and win like a Roland Garros. I mean, it takes a lot of, the competition out there is tough. Our time is coming. There's so many people. It's a beautiful sport, and that you can play. One of the biggest things that tennis teaches you. I mean, I think it's such a great sport because it's not subjective. I mean, I'm down here. I'm signed in. I'm 45 years old. I'm signed into a $10,000 future, because I still think there's that opportunity. I mean, I've walked onto tennis courts and played guys that were 6'9", and been like, oh my God, I'm going to lose to this guy, and then, I end up winning. Or I've walked on and I've played guys 5'2", and I'm like, oh God, this is going to take 15 minutes. This will be easy. And then the guy just outgrinds me and loses. There's so many different ways to hit tennis balls, and it's such a beautiful sport to watch, and the drama, and it's like a boxing match. Our time as American tennis players I think we're firmly rooted with the women in the game, and our college system is beautiful. People all wish they had that. We bring these foreign kids in, and they play on our teams, and it's a great diversity, and they pick up scholarships and all that. I was in that, and I was always like, how can we get the American scholarships for the American players? But, on my college team, I had English players, German players. It kind of gave me that I'd never met anyone from Germany until I played on a tennis team with them. That's, it's a multicultural, racial sport that we're able to all agree on. And, the fact that it's not, someone doesn't have to put you on your team. I mean, that's why I kind of switched over from basketball was, I wasn't making all-star teams, but I felt like I was better than this kid, but there was no way to really prove it. With tennis, you've got your results. You wake up every day and you say, hey, it's a new day, it's an opportunity, and you can see your growth. And I encourage all the kids and the parents out there, if they can set the goal of improving 10%, each year, getting better. And, some years they might jump 12% or they might fall back. So, you just say, hey, I'm going to keep playing for the next 10 years. You're going to end up somewhere. You're going to get results. And it's about, for me, the sport's about there's a time when you practice it and it comes together and you're no longer playing tennis, but tennis is kind of playing you, and you put in long, hard hours and you train, and it's sometimes not all that exciting, the practices aren't, and then it'll come out in a match, and it'll make you realize that there's something bigger out there than yourself, and you'll have moments and zone experiences, and you might have a ton of zone experiences, your whole college. I've talked to kids that in a season, they said, we were playing so many matches that the ball looked like a grapefruit for about 3 or 4 weeks. I was just in a different level, and I was hitting the ball, and I'm like, gosh, isn't that great? And you're like, yes, it feels so good.
Yeah, that's very cool. Well, Trent, thank you so much for coming on today. We're at the end of our hour, and I just appreciate so much you taking time out. I know you are constantly traveling, and I'm happy we finally found a day that worked for both of us to do this.
Yeah.
So, good luck.
Well, I love what you're doing. you're doing the good work.
Well, thank you. And to my listeners, I want to thank you guys for tuning in. Please check out ParentingAces.com. There's tons of new content on the site and some really important issues being discussed. So I hope you will all participate and help us grow this fantastic sport and keep it alive for our kids and their kids and generations to come. Thanks for being with us today. To all of you, have a great week, and I'll see you on the court.
All right, Lisa, thank you.